Hi, welcome to Comma, where we are seriously unserious, where we have conversations, laughter, and everything else in between. It is our first episode today, and we are so glad to have you here with us. And today we're going to talk on a topic of cancel culture, or rather in Malaysia, we call it boycott. And today we have a very good friend with us. He's all the way from Alustar. He's the host of Soul Food. He's a friend dear to us. It's none other than Daniel. Welcome, Daniel.
What's up? Hey, thanks for having me, bro.
Man, it's a pleasure. So let's dive into today's topic. We talk about cancel culture, and I think cancel culture was started with good intentions, right? They started with wanting to keep celebrities or people in power, to keep them accountable.
Keep them in check, basically, right?
Yeah, accountable to their actions. But 2025, fast forward 2025, I think it has now evolved into something different. What do you think?
Definitely. One of the things about cancel culture that I am very scared of now, especially for me, is that people will go back to my Facebook and take a deep dive into some of my old photos, maybe some of my comments with Benji. I don't know, right? or like some of the interactions and kind of like hold me accountable to it. I think cancel culture, in essence, like I kind of like your posture with it. Is there's a positive take to it, right? Where we hold someone accountable. But I think it gets dangerous, like back to my fear again, where you hold me accountable for something I did in the past. I was trying to remember a long time, like sad cancel culture story, which is a comedian we're all familiar, Kevin Hart. I think he had a dream and aspiration to really be a host at, I can't remember, is it the Grammy or something like that? I can't remember, right? You remember that?
I believe it was Oscars. I think probably the
Oscars, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a dream for him. Yeah. Like, I think as a comedian, as an African American, working his way through the whole Hollywood scene, I think he deserved it. I mean, he's a really good comedian and communicator. But he got cancelled because of a tweet, like a couple of years prior before that. And sorry isn't enough. And this is the dangerous thing about cancel culture, because I feel that yes, A, we need to hold someone accountable, but B, the danger of like holding someone accountable to our standard.
Right.
Like we want them persecuted, we want them dead by our own way, and for those people who study media, we learn this called death by media, right? So cancel culture has like been there for a long time. Like in the court alone is not enough. Like people are waiting what the news have to say. So I think my opinion is that we have to be very careful. I think we need to call people out,
Right.
Because we don't want to have a culture where it's okay, you're doing something wrong, it's a sin, you are hurting someone, and then you get away with it. No, I think, I want to be in check as well.
Yep.
But to hold someone accountable to our standard. So I think we need to really establish, I think especially in a community, I only can speak for a community, right?
Yep.
A church or a organization, we need to have a rule of engagement, right? So if we don't have that rule of engagement, then Chinese say, 乱七八糟 lah, right? We do whatever we want. Yeah. So I hope it answers that.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think sometimes what cancel culture is also a mob mentality, where some people who not necessarily understand the situation, seeing it from a outsider's perspective, coming together because they think it's a good cause. And that being the case, sometimes it rallies a lot of people behind a cause that they may not understand.
Yeah.
For instance, the recent movie, the Snow White movie, right?
Snow White, okay.
I think it's now one of the lowest rated movie on IMDb.
Is that the one that people compare Gal Gadot with Rachel? I can't remember her last name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
But I think that is, I went and looked it up. It has, if I'm not wrong, if the numbers are right, there are like 300 over thousand reviews on IMDb.
Oh my gosh.
Which then makes me question, like, did they actually watch the movie, or are they just riding the hype behind that, sadly to say, the hate train? And so with that in mind, so how then do we navigate through this cancel culture where people are not necessarily understanding the situation, but riding the hype behind hating. So do you think it's something that is common now?
It's definitely common now, right? I think, in essence, people want a platform to voice out their opinion. This is the good and bad of internet, right? You get good reviews, but you also get bad reviews
Right.
in the same mix. But I think I like to go back to like the rule of engagement. If we are going to be a part of a society that agree, okay, we need to hold someone accountable. So let's say, for example, like that Snow White movie. I think if you watch the movie first and then you give your honest review, I think that's acceptable. But if you didn't watch the review,
Right.
and it's just a bias,
Yeah.
because you prefer another actress besides Rachel, right? And then you just share your opinion. I think that's very, very dangerous, you know. And I think to get on the hate train, you should never be on the hate train
Right.
in the first place. So I think coming back again to the whole idea of cancel culture, right? We want to really hold people accountable, but man, I think this is where community comes into play, where we hold ourselves accountable. Like, hey, Joey, that day, right? You say this thing not cool, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like within my community, we have a church called Soul, and I know, of course, now it's easier because we kind of know each other. And so if someone says something derogative or
Right.
someone says something nasty, you can put that person aside. Hey, you know, can you imagine that it's already hard enough?
Yeah.
And then now you're launching in online and then you say whatever you want to say and then no one holds you accountable. Jalat lah, bro. You know, it's really a big problem. So, yeah, definitely it's an issue and something that, you know, us as a community, and like your podcast, right? The comma.
Yeah.
Pause to like,
Yeah.
hey, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
You know, like it's kind of good. We are calling people out. You know, this is wrong. But then the next part also, right? If
Yep.
I throw back the question to you, right? Like, we call that person out. Then the next part is holding them to our standard.
Right.
What are your thoughts about that, bro? Like,
I think this term of holding somebody to our standards is a variable that we cannot control, right? Some people find it acceptable with certain things, and some people find it extremely unacceptable.
Yeah.
But I think when we talk about standards, especially in the cancel culture, I think it's a very dangerous thing because we are measuring people with different rulers. And let's say if I'm the person who's being cancelled, how do I then measure up? Which ruler do I use to measure up to say this is okay, this is not okay? And I think that's the danger of the, I would say, the online community, because everybody hides behind an avatar.
Yeah.
You know, some people can put just an empty display photo and their name and just blast off. And so I think that having to measure up, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, if you ask me, I think it's then getting people who are in our community, again,
Yeah.
community,
You mean the community, right?
yeah, to then check. It is not to compare or not to say this or that, but just to check and say, hey, if I were to say this and if I come out like this, how will it sound across the board?
Yeah.
And so I think going back to your statement of community, I think it's very important for us to have a wide community as well.
Yeah.
I think the saying of birds of a feather flock together,
Yeah.
It can be dangerous as well.
Wow, the idiom. Okay, yeah. I get you, bro.
Yeah, I think it can be dangerous because if we are all like-minded people,
Yeah.
we may think some statements are acceptable to our community, but not to others.
That is so good, bro. I really like where you're coming from. Like, you know, because, I mean, not to add more hate to this, personally, I like Kanye, right? But you do wonder who are the people around Kanye.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And we celebrate his musical talent, we celebrate what he does for hip hop, but who are the voices around him, you
Yeah.
know? Watching his documentary, I realized that his mom was one of that voices in his life, strong voices that really kept him grounded.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you get a very healthy dose of Kanye back then, right? Today for myself, like, I think in reflection of what you just shared, we are familiar with the term love language, right?
Yeah.
And for me, my love language is words of affirmation. So words matter to me.
Right.
I think as a young boy, I realized that when praises come my way, whoa, shock, man, you know? But when they don't come, that's when it's dangerous. But in that identification of words of affirmation, you do realize that also words that hurt really matter to you as well. And so today, older, mature, coming back to community, I realize also a healthy community, one like you mentioned, and I want to add on to that, also having the right voices in your life.
Right.
Like for me, I appreciate when someone tells me, hey, Daniel, good job sharing that content, you know, at church this week. I really love your presentation, Daniel. Like, that is nice for me, but I've learned to have that wall, in a sense, to protect, to have the right voices. So for me, my wife is number one. Like, she keeps me in check. You know, she will like, Dan, I think you can do better.
Right.
Or Dan, that was phenomenal. Because I'm sure you experienced this before. Like, you know, when you, let's say in a context of church, you worship lead, right? A Sunday session, or you preach. You are like running on 110% adrenaline, you know, and you're giving your best. And right after that, there's this like drop of adrenaline, you know, this post blue. And can you imagine someone comes and tell you something that is too sweet, that strokes your ego, or someone tells you something that is really detrimental? Wow, bro, and I've really received the both ends of it. So I've learned to like come to understand it, because especially today, as a leader of a community, man, the next thing I need is a cancel culture coming my way. And people going on the hate train. And here's the thing, we can never control what people want to say. You know, I think one of the more recent ones, this is something my wife and I talk about, is I can't change my face. You know, people say that this is a naughty boy face, this is a, I can't do anything about it, you know. And sometimes you get to me like, should I dress differently? Should I present myself differently? Should I, you know, talk a certain way? I mean, yeah, there's some truth to it. But when I go back to some of the fundamental things, I am not a disrespectful person. I am not a person who mock other people. I'm not a person who is cursing, using bad words. I don't do that. So then I begin to, I mean, you retract back, and I think that for our listeners, you know, I think it's good to retract back sometimes. That is this a comment that is helpful, or is this a hate train coming your way? You know, and because I don't want us to just come to a point where a hate train is coming our way, and then we take it and we assume it that, okay, this is good for us, but actually it's not. You know, so for me, like, my wife is one, you know, Pastor Daniel is another guy, you know, you, bro, you know, I really enjoy the conversations that we have, because I know, I think also coming back to cancel culture and speaking from the perspective of like protecting yourself, like really know who are the voices in your life. So we don't want to go to the extreme of Kanye, where everything is like, yeah, bro, you're a genius, you know? And then you've got all these anti-Semitic comments coming up. But then we also don't want to go to the other extreme where everything is just negative, and then like, yeah, I'm building a strong character, you know? And you go to like this Andrew Tate kind of like persona. I think we have to be very, very careful. So I wouldn't use the word balance, but healthy. You know, I think we need both. You know, where that's why we learn, right? And I don't want us to just come or become a generation where, or become a society, where we are just like only just accept the good and reject the bad. But actually, can we just take both and learn from it? You know, to be stronger,
Right.
resilient as well. Yeah, so I guess that's my perspective, like, at least on it.
I think that's great. Having our wives as the person that keeps us grounded.
Cheers, babe. I love you.
It's amazing. So I want to. We've been talking in a much global state.
Yeah.
I want to hone into locally in Malaysia as well. Well, do you see this cancel culture being something that is prominent in Malaysia as well?
I think, yeah. Funny, right? I think most of the cancel culture stories I know are international. But Malaysia, I'm sure. Our brothers and sisters from the Malay industry or the Chinese industry, I mean, I'm talking about like entertainment industry,
Yep.
right? Because of course the other industries, whether business and all, I'm sure they face their own, but
Yep.
at least the ones that we know, like in the entertainment industry, they face their own that is
Right.
pretty mad, you know. But coming back to like cancel culture in a way that is holding people accountable, right? Yeah, I wish we could cancel some who, you know, just for the sake of getting a view,
Yeah.
for the sake of appealing to culture, then they, you know, maybe do something that they shouldn't do,
Right.
or say something they shouldn't say, you know, that happens in our entertainment context
Right.
locally. But yeah, Malaysia, actually, we have our fair share, right? I mean, like, poor YB, Syed Saddiq, you know, he's doing his best to, again, I'm not a politician, I don't know the full extent
Right.
of it, but just third party, just want to be very wise, right? Third party, talking to some friends who are involved in politics, you do know that this guy is really working hard, you know, for his constituents at
Yep.
Muar, and I don't know if he's dating that actress, right?
Right.
But hey, the money is there for Muar, man.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And he's really doing his best to go all the way. But I think locally coming back again and the idea of community, it's so important because, I mean, we talk about cancel culture at a global scale, at a macro scale, but at a micro scale, it's also detrimental
Yep.
because cancel culture happens at school. You know, I guess it's me, maybe because I'm thick-faced, right? I've shared this before, and maybe I had a conversation with you. When I was young, because of the color of my skin,
Right.
I'm neither Indian, neither Chinese, right? And the Malays don't accept me,
Right.
you know? And I remember I was labeled Heren Yakao, which is the Darlie toothpaste. And
Okay.
that was the closest that they could relate me
Right.
to, you know? And quote unquote, like, I just kind of got cancelled into that one category. But thank God for my thick face. And I guess, you know, you just kind of power through.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many people who get cancelled or bullied because of that. You know, recently there is a Netflix show, I don't know if you watch it, called Adolescence.
Yeah. I did.
Have you finished it yet?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, for those of you who watch, I mean, the entertainment is good and all, but that's the reality.
Right.
You know, no, everybody is threading very carefully online. Everybody is posting the best version of themselves online, and poor 13-year-old kid.
Yep.
You know, sorry, I sidetracked a little bit, right? The part of
Yep.
sorry, spoiler alert, right? The part of adolescence that really caught my attention is how calm the policemen were.
Right.
It was like, it's like norm, another 13-year-old. So I was looking for that, hey, no kesian lah. Like,
Right.
you know, why they didn't resonate with the kid? Don't have.
Right.
They were like, are you ready to do this?
Right.
Remember
Yes,
the part?
yes.
He was stoic.
Yeah.
It was like, another day, another case. I'm like, how many cases are there like that, right? I mean, this happened, you know, overseas. I remember speaking once about, in our church, there was a Christmas sad story because this family, one brother got more presents than the other.
Right.
Next thing you know, he had a gun and started shooting. It's sad, and kind of thank God that Malaysia, we've got strong gun rules.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have that kind of issue. But the bullying, the cancelling of culture, 为什么你臭臭的, you know?
Yeah.
And we don't know why that person is smelly, you know? Maybe because his mom or dad is not around,
Right.
he cannot wash his clothes, you know? Recently, I engaged my daughter. She's 9 years old. And I'm just so proud of her. I'm really, really proud of her. She's 9 years old, but she's aware. She recognizes that her friend, her pinafore is not ironed well.
Right.
Her white shirt is dirty. And her hair is messy. And my daughter's questions, and again, 9-year-old are legit. She's like, I wonder if my friend has a mom at home.
Wow.
And I said, why do you ask that? And she's like, yeah, because of all this appearance and everything, really would like to help her. And she asked me, Daddy, how do I ask her if she has a mom or not?
Wow.
And she wants to ask in the best way
right.
possible, right? And so I'm like, hey, you know what? Why not be a friend first?
Right.
I know you're curious. I'm also curious, but why not be a friend first? And I think we need more of this, you know, because can you imagine if my daughter and her friends just cancel that girl?
Wow.
You know, 你没有妈妈的, like, you know, you don't have mom.
Yeah.
Why your hair so messy, kind of thing. But what if the parents are going through a divorce?
Right.
What if it's a tough time happening at home?
Right.
You know, and so I think locally here, yeah, we do face it. We do sidetrack a lot of people, bro. Yeah. I'm sure you also face, like, within your community, right?
Yeah, I think it's so one of the recent story that I heard, it happened with a group of young people that I knew. So there was a group of friends, I knew the group, and they were deciding to cancel one of the friend in their group. And it was something that actually took traction on social media, where they were posting and like cancel so-and-so, cancel so-and-so. It was a repost after repost and after repost. And that actually gained traction, and that person was actually cancelled. So then it got me thinking, where is the line where we draw from keeping people accountable and bullying? And I think that line becomes very narrow, very gray. And so, again, I think your story with your daughter, it's a good reminder for us to have empathy, right?
Yep.
I think when we have...
And empathy only comes or grows from a community.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I fully agree with you. I think generally people are empathetic. Generally, I think. But I think also because the way society has structured itself and the way we live in society, we are skeptics.
Yeah.
Nobody's a born skeptic.
Yeah.
It's nurturing from environment. But I think coming back to this, I think if we want to keep cancel culture in check, it is to think along the lines of empathy. Right? Yes, we want to keep people in check. We want them to be accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
But also having to think, why did they do that? Why did they say that? Like you said, some people could be going through tough time in their life.
Yeah.
Some people could be struggling with, not having...
It's like recently, right, that boy at Subway.
Yeah.
I'm sure all of you know that story, right? Yes, it's indecent, you know. But my thought process is, where's his parents? Is he alone?
Right.
Because if you're in the right community, they will keep you in check.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I know pornography is real, but bro, right? Like if you have the community, you know, but poor boy, like he got cancelled.
Yeah.
And you know what's the thing? I found out about this story, right? And I know this may sound ideal right now. And I get our foundation for at least this podcast of cancel culture to hold people accountable, is that we call that person out, but do we create the space for them to come and learn?
That's right.
Do we create a space that, hey, you made a mistake, it's mad, but I want you to know you're loved here?
Right.
because going to that boy's story, I don't know the name. I forget the name. And I mean, you guys can Google it later. Apparently, there was someone who is sort of like not a nice person, who is like known for grooming young ones,
Okay.
who came on the scene and was there with him.
Wow.
So apparently in the video, when he was making the apology, there was this guy in a suit that was like standing beside him and all, and tried to like guide him. It was like a mentor. And then, so this is like two-part cancel culture.
Right.
One was for calling out that boy who did something indecent
Yep.
at Sunway, right? And then the other one was calling out, who is this guy that was
Okay.
there with him?
Yeah.
Like, kind of like grooming him and teaching him. And later on, they found out that this is not a not so nice guy that was there for him.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's an ideal now, but I think we need to work towards it.
Yeah.
Like, let's call each other out. Like, hey, I don't think that's right. DK, like, you need to be better. Okay.
Right.
But do you have a space for me to learn?
Right. All right.
You know, like, one of the things that, especially, I only can speak for like church, right, is that sometimes guys try their best to get a girl's attention. Guys, try their best to, I don't know what's the new word for it, but maybe a millennial like myself, tackle the girl, right?
Trying to raise her up.
Oh, yes, thanks. To raise her up, right? Try to raise her up, but the raise failed. And man, that guy kena cancel, kau, right? Like, I've heard so many stories, my wife and I, and yeah, we do we create that space like, okay, hey bro, I know this happened to you,
Right.
Don't worry. Like, I think this is where you've done wrong. I think you can do better,
Right.
This area. We don't do that.
Right.
And I think that's an issue. And I think coming back to also like Malaysia, for all of us, I think let's not be quick to judge.
Yeah.
Really study the situation, what's really going on, and echoing like what you said, empathy, right?
Yeah.
I generally believe that every human being is a nice person.
Yep.
Or else why we call out, right? Why do we want to keep check,
Yeah.
right? But I think it's so important to not hold people accountable to our standard,
Right. Right.
to our own judgment. Poor guy, who made a mistake, but everyone is basing him off their judgment.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, this is the way it should be. No, he should be forgiven. No, he should be reprimanded. Reprimanded is not enough. He should be persecuted. No, persecuted is not. He should be cancelled out of this earth.
Damn.
And yeah, he cannot be anywhere anymore.
Yeah.
So I think coming back to community as well, I think it's so important that we need to educate as well.
Right.
Like cancel culture is very, very real. Like when you started the podcast, you shared how cancel culture is started off well.
Yep.
And now it has come to a point where it's just so demeaning
Yeah.
and dangerous.
Yeah.
Can we win back the accountability part?
Right.
But also that love,
Yeah.
to accept that person. But what are your hopes for cancel culture? In a sense where, what do you hope that for people to do better, or your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I think you've put it so beautifully. Having to take back that accountability, but also doing it in love. I think that's the ideal world where both marries together, where we hold people accountable, yet we do it in love, and we do it in the space where we can help them to grow and learn as well. I think a lot of cancel culture is one directional. It's a lot of negativity in one way, but not so much as people journeying with them to say, hey, you've done something wrong. Let's journey to see how we can do better.
Yeah. I mean, we remember those people who cancelled us and did nothing about it.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
right.
mean?
That's right.
But we also remember those, in our Asian context, uncle and aunties who called us out.
Yeah.
Hey, boy,
Yeah.
don't do that, huh?
Yeah.
This is how you do it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
But we remember those who nonsense are you, huh?
Yeah.
And then they just walk away.
That's right.
And then the worst thing is, I mean, it goes back to gossip, right?
Yeah.
Ayo, cik Gina kia. Like, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think really like the accountability part. But yeah, you were saying, sorry.
Yeah, I think we just that marrying two of it together and having that community as well.
Yeah.
I think we have to kind of define community, not just it being physical. I think the online community is also growing.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, it's having healthy online community as
Yeah.
well, where we're open for correction, yet we are also open to share correction in love.
Yeah.
And so I hope to hear some of our viewers as well. If you've experienced cancel culture in your life, if you experienced it,
Yeah.
how was it like for you? Did somebody journey with you, or was it canceled and left you there to pick up the pieces?
You know, Joey, if I can add one more thing, right?
Yeah.
I think one thing about cancel culture is we really need to know consequences.
Right.
Like, we don't think about the consequences of our actions.
Yeah.
We just say first, we just do first. I think consequences is a good accountability check. Let's just take the context of online, right?
Right.
If I'm going to say this, what is the effect? If I'm going to call this person out, what is the effect?
Yeah.
What if I'm going to call this person out for what he or she has done wrong? Is there a way to point this person to for help?
Right. Yeah.
You know, I think most of the comments we see is like, you are undeserving, you are
Yeah.
stupid, you are ugly. It's always to death, death, death.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, you know? But can we like, hey bro, what you did is wrong. Here's the website for befrienders. You know befrienders,
Yeah.
right? Hey, dude, that's a nasty thing to do.
Yep.
I don't think that's the best way. Bro, have you heard of Joey from City Light? Like, you know, let's bring that,
Yeah.
you know, back.
Yeah.
Like, and not live in this world of like disclaimers.
Yeah.
And you know, the world of disclaimer is like kind of like protecting yourself. It's
Yeah.
not even accountability. Like, you know, by the way, I'm a good guy. You know, Benji, yeah, Ray, I'm a good guy. Yeah, please know I'm a good guy. Then, because you made a disclaimer, you're a good guy,
Yeah.
you can say the nastiest things. No, it's consequences. Like,
Yeah.
do you know the consequences of your words?
Yeah.
And again, consequences can be good, both good and bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would like to see good consequences
Yeah,
from
so
it,
good.
you know. Hey, DK, what you said about that person wasn't a nice thing to say. You know, actually, it's not a nice thing to say. I think you can say this better in a better way.
Yeah.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
instead of like you, DK, your stupid mouth. Yeah. And then end.
Yeah.
And there's no context
Yep.
to what's gonna go on further. And so I think these are some things we can do to keep in check.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
right.
Consequences.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think we are almost at the end. And so again, for our viewers, we want to hear from you as well.
Yep.
We want to hear the good and the bad. And if you are struggling being cancelled, you're struggling with having to come out of it, having to be part of a community, we want to welcome you to our online space here at Comma. No judgment. We accept you just the way you are. We want to walk with you, want to journey with you. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, DK,
Thanks,
for being
bro.
here with us.
Really love it.
We'll see you in the next episode.